Hello and welcome to Exploring Warcraft, a series where I, Alan Ibrahim, your host, am going to take you across the world of Warcraft and its different landscapes as we try to come to terms with how we fell in love with this game, why we fell in love with it, and what's so beautiful about its many, many landscapes. As you can see, we're currently in Azshara, which is a low-level horde leveling zone, and we are going to be hitting all of the major corners of Azshara and talking about them in the context of my memories in this zone, because it's a zone that's pretty important to me, and I want this series to be about my memories with this game and how, for such an expansive universe full of magic and mystery and change, World of Warcraft is at its core still a video game about space and about exploring space. So to start off, like I said, we're in Azshara. It's a horde leveling zone, usually around the range of, I think, the 10s to the 20s, and it was one of the first major zones. Oh, you can see some rain now. First major zones that was affected by the Cataclysm. So we're going to talk about that as we head to different corners of the zone. So let's get started. So I've turned around from where we started because this is the gate to Orgrimmar City, the Horde capital, and many players find themselves going to Orgrimmar right after their leveling experience in one of the southern zones of Kalimdor, either Durotar or its nearby island if you are a orc or troll, respectively. And before trolls got their own island, they were also on Durotar. And Orgrimmar, amazing city, but that's not for this zone. That's, obviously not in Azshara. But the fact that it connects to Azshara leads to what's one of my favorite things about Azshara, which is the industrial meets fall landscape. So let's go highlight some of that. Right away, you can already see the shredders going to work right next to several deer. A little touch that I find really beautiful. If I'm not mistaken, this sort of like reintroduction of the shredders was there from pre-Cataclysm. You can see that those logs are obviously pretty old, and that model of the logs is dated a little bit, but we're going to see some more updated stuff as we move along. Even just the red trees and the sort of dying trees and to the side on the west over there, you can kind of tell that this is a fallen landscape. Azshara itself is actually named after a character that's very important to the Warcraft lore, but like I said, this is a series about my experiences, and so I don't claim to be an expert on Azshara, but she it's a name you've heard if you've played World of Warcraft before plenty of times. So you have the Eye of Azshara, obviously. You have Azshara in here. I always thought it was she's like a water Naga queen. I think she actually is the queen of the Naga, but no Googling anything on here on Exploring Warcraft. So let's move right along. Here we find ourselves at Lake Menar, an area that you can sort of see the death surrounding it immediately. It gives this very creepy air, and if I turned the camera just around a little bit, you would start seeing several restless spirits nearby. But I'm not actually engaging with any enemies because I don't really want this to have any combat in this series. But point is, lots of death, lots of fallen cities, lots of Naga history here in Azshara. It's really beautiful. It's really sad. It's one of those places where you, the player of World of Warcraft, start to realize that this is a world that has a rich history that you were not a part of for its major beats. Even if you played the Warcraft RTSs, the history of the Naga happened before those. So it is a zone that you're exploring after the fact, which is something I've always found fascinating. And it's an idea we're going to see a lot as we continue to go through Exploring Warcraft. Here we find ourselves at the Secret Lab, a corner of the zone that I'm not exactly sure if this was pre or post-Cataclysm. I would assume post-Cataclysm because one of the coolest things that the Cataclysm added to Azeroth was the introduction of Goblin technology. This Secret Lab, I believe, is run by goblins. You can see the research, the test subjects all around, running around. And Subject 4, the dinosaur, was in the middle of the screen for a while there, but has gone and run off. He's a little red dinosaur. Again, I only quested partially in this area post-Cataclysm, so a lot of the Cataclysm-specific stuff is going over my head. But in a minute, I'm going to show you a part that I definitely do remember from doing post-Cata, and it's one of my favorite parts of the zone. So let's get right to it. And now we find ourselves at the center of Azshara, a corner that was added post-Cataclysm. It's Bilgewater Harbor. It's a goblin mini-city, in a way. Very beautiful. Utterly just dripping in Warcraft history and that sort of like cool gnome goblin style. Mostly goblin, actually. Lots of explosives here, as you can see. I'm actually doing a mobile shot just because this place is large enough that I think it warrants a little bit of camera work. And there's a lot going on, like that dancing orc in the corner. It's a really, really well-crafted corner, and it shows the stuff that Blizzard started to do post-Cataclysm, which was take zones that were mostly these quiet, sad landscapes, and it added weirdness and chaos to them. Like this giant cannon with a goblin's head on the top. That's crazy. This is a place that I remembered playing in 2010 when I tried getting back into the game after quitting for a little while. And I said, wow, they really changed the leveling zone. And there's new quests, new storylines involving all the goblins. It's really a sight to behold, actually. This is a huge addition. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Azshara was not flooded before the Cataclysm. So now we're going to take a trip across the water as I talk about the Cataclysm. For those not in the know, in 2010, the expansion to World of Warcraft, Cataclysm, not only added new land masses to Azeroth, it also changed fundamentally the starting zones and leveling zones of old Azeroth. Because the Dragon Deathwing, sort of the villain of the expansion, came through, wreaked havoc, and installed a lot of terrible people into power, and it led to a permanent, irreversible change in the core landscape of the game. And in a way, that event was part of why I started this series, because I leveled primarily my main characters pre-Cataclysm. So when Cataclysm came out, I had to do a lot of new leveling just to see the zones, but I never saw everything, obviously. It's kind of impossible. And Azshara was not flooded when I played it. So it was very jarring to see this water kind of come to encompass the whole zone and make it into a watery, grave-like place. We now find ourselves at Sable Ridge, where many sable dragons and sable drakes fly around. Lots of death, continuing that theme of death. Charred Earth, also a huge thing in the Cataclysm. Dead dragons, death, some shields, some horde soldiers. And one of the more interesting parts of the additions to Azshara was this goblin train yard, which brings to mind not only like in a sort of fun, charming goblin way, a roller coaster, but as you can see, it doesn't wind the way a roller coaster does. It doesn't move the way one does. You have portals coming off of the sides, and you have all these lights. Lots of good goblin vibes. But like with the American railroad system, the railroads in Azshara feel like an intrusion upon nature, to me at least. Because they're huge, they're obnoxious, they encompass the whole entire zone. You only see occasional breaks in them, and then, hey, here we go, right back into the train tracks. And I believe there's a quest that involves you riding along these tracks at some point, or some sort of achievement, but it never to me seemed like a good thing that they went ahead and added this industrial vibe to what was such a pastoral, beautiful, kind of quietly tragic zone, if you will. And it runs and it runs and it runs. I could honestly do the rest of the video on these train tracks, just going above and under them. I think that idea of technology intruding upon nature is a major theme in World of Warcraft. I think that you'll see in plenty of zones this idea that people didn't come here anymore. The Naga abandoned Azshara, the zone. The humans abandoned it. The Horde only go here to for military reasons. And look where we are now. One of the final places on our journey through Azshara is the Gallywix Pleasure Palace. Gallywix is the leader of the Goblin race in World of Warcraft, and he is one of the weird faction leaders who you don't exactly get to hang out or party with much, but you see his face plastered everywhere because he's a little bit conceited, as you can see. He's a big goblin. I guess he's big for a goblin, and he really likes his face. So if they mined out the earth to make this statue of his face, and it's pretty cute. It's pretty charming. I kind of love it. Very fabulous. But the piece de resistance of the Galux Pleasure Palace is the golf course. There's no doubt that there's quests here involving this golf course and the pool and just, man, everything about this little corner of Azshara speaks to me in funny ways. Like, look at this. There's toys in the pool. There's lights up, there's a race course. Galux has all of his mooks, I believe is their names, running around protecting him. I actually had to fight one of them to get this close-up shot. You even have little flamingos and umbrellas and the toys in the pool and the smokestacks. Just very cool industrial vibes. I don't think the goblins get enough love, because even when I played a goblin, I finished and noticed that very few people played them beyond their starting area, just because the goblin counterparts for the Alliance are the gnomes. Now, not many Alliance players that I know play gnomes, only a couple, and that's mostly because you can't really see armor on small characters. So take that, apply that to the goblins, and then also apply the fact that they are physically unattractive and they don't have a lot of backstory or narrative support in the game, and you get one of the least popular races, if not the least popular race in the entire game. Which is a shame, because their architecture and their story is actually really cool, and Galliwix is an interesting character that obviously got a lot of love in things like Hearthstone and sort of the grander Warcraft lore. Really a shame. Our final stop on this Exploring Warcraft episode is the Ruins of Eldorath, which were also in the game pre-Cataclysm. Ooh, and as you can hear right now, if I'm allowing the sound effects to play, actually I probably am not. Usually just am planning to use some environmental zone music. There's bombs going off because you have these ruins, they're beautiful, you have these giants swinging their hammers, and also there's a bunch of mortars, and they're firing all the time. So, and there's a war going on. It's a bad spot. Here you can see the Naga all lined up and colorful and beautiful, and the do not enter signs. It's a bad time to be in Azshara right now, but it's almost comical how bad things are. Like, the game doesn't play it like it's miserable. You got these crooked ass trees over here, and you have the signs of a ruined civilization. The Naga are a race of aquatic creatures, aquatic snake-like creatures even, that lived in the game and lived in the world, and then they were corrupted, and now they are disgusting. And you fight them. They're one of the most common enemies in the entire game. You fight them from 1 to 110. You're never not fighting Naga at some point. And for them to make a zone for them is really great. And again, the Naga, one of the least explored races in the World of Warcraft. Many people actually want them to become playable at some point. I believe this is actually Azshara herself, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of a really appropriate spot to end on this little moment here. As we watch the enslaved son of Arkarok, that's that NPC's name right there, and his eternal watch over the statue of Azshara. Zones like this make me think about worlds that used to be, and history, and going to history class and learning about entire civilizations and worlds that existed beyond us and will live beyond us. And that's a little thing that I always found fascinating, and Azshara communicates it really well. It's a beautiful zone. The quests here are fun and get into a lot of the goblin narrative, and I definitely recommend it if you are starting a horde character, and if you find yourself on another continent and you're bored in your lower levels, then definitely give Azshara a try. Thank you for watching Exploring Warcraft. You can like this video, leave a comment if you enjoyed the series and you want to see more of these. I'm going to be filming plenty more of them either way, and we here at Pop Modern Plays love video games and love pop culture, so expect plenty of other shows. This isn't going to get in the place of anything else that we're doing here. And yeah, let your friends know if you like this also. I would like this to take off at least in some corner of the world and make some people happy whether or not they play the game or not. I hope that this is interesting even if you don't play the World of Warcraft. So thank you for watching. Have a good one.